Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a conversation that's starting to heat up? You know, that moment when the words fly faster, the tone sharpens, and before you know it, you're in the midst of a full-blown argument. It feels like a storm brewing, and you wonder, was this really necessary? What if one simple choice could have changed the entire outcome? Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked the video, so that you can help me continue spreading Stoic philosophy. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do so and activate the bell so you don't miss any future videos on Stoicism. Imagine for a second that instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, you paused, took a deep breath and remembered one thing: you are in control of your response. What if you could learn to harness the power of your thoughts to prevent an argument from escalating? This is where Stoic wisdom can be a game changer. Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy, it's a toolkit for handling life's toughest challenges, especially conflict. The Stoics believed that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can always control how we react. And when it comes to arguments, that reaction is everything. In this video, we're diving into the practical ways Stoic principles can help you diffuse a conversation before it turns into an argument. We'll explore powerful techniques like emotional detachment, the art of perception, and responding with empathy, all rooted in ancient Stoic wisdom. These tools aren't just for philosophers, they're for everyday people, just like you and me, who want to stay calm and composed when emotions run high. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to turn a potentially explosive situation into one of calm, understanding, and resolution. Ready to learn how to use Stoicism to keep your cool? Let's get started. Technique 1. The Stoic approach to anger. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This powerful quote from Epictetus captures the essence of Stoic philosophy when it comes to anger. In Stoicism, anger is seen not as an automatic response to the world around us, but as a reaction, often to things that are beyond our control. A rude comment, a misunderstanding, or someone else's frustration can trigger anger, but what truly matters is how we choose to respond. Stoics believe that our power lies not in what happens to us, but in how we control our emotions in reaction to those events. Anger, in Stoic thought, is rooted in our attachment to things outside of our control. Things like other people's words, actions, or attitudes. When we let external events dictate our emotional state, we lose our peace and our power. The Stoics argue that instead of reacting with frustration or hostility, we should focus on what is within our control: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses. Seneca, another influential Stoic philosopher, offers further insight into managing anger. He wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." This quote reminds us that anger, when unchecked, often causes more harm to the person feeling it than to the one who may have caused it. The problem isn't the external event, it's the internal response we choose. Stoicism teaches that anger stems from our perception of events. We often believe that someone's words or actions have the power to hurt us, but it's our own interpretation of those actions that triggers our emotional response. When we choose to see these events with a different perspective, the power of anger diminishes. For example, if a colleague snaps at you during a meeting, instead of seeing their words as a personal attack, you could view them as a reflection of their own stress or frustration. This shift in perception helps prevent you from reacting with anger, and instead you respond with calm and understanding. In a practical scenario, let's say you're driving and another driver cuts you off. Most people would feel the surge of anger in that moment, but a Stoic response would be different. Instead of immediately reacting, you could pause and remind yourself that the other driver's actions are outside your control. You might even consider that they could be in a hurry or dealing with something personal. By shifting your perspective, the anger begins to lose its grip on you, and you maintain control over your own peace of mind. By practicing this form of emotional restraint, we can prevent small conflicts from escalating into bigger problems. When we choose to focus on our reactions, we realize that we have the power to keep our composure no matter the situation. Technique 2. The power of perception, changing your perspective. In Stoic philosophy, one of the most powerful tools for managing conflict is the principle of perception. It teaches us that how we perceive a situation can entirely shape our response. Instead of seeing external events as they appear on the surface, Stoics encourage us to look deeper at the underlying causes and the bigger picture. Perception is the lens through which we view the world. When someone snaps at us or reacts angrily, our initial instinct might be to take it personally. We might feel hurt, offended, or defensive, assuming that their anger is directed at us. But Stoicism challenges this immediate reaction, urging us to pause and reconsider our interpretation of the situation. A Stoic doesn't view another person's anger as a direct attack, but as a reflection of their inner state. For example, if a friend or colleague raises their voice during a conversation, instead of assuming they're angry with you, you could consider that they might be dealing with stress, personal frustration, or even external pressures. This shift in perspective helps you stay calm and neutral rather than reacting in kind. Let's take a real-life scenario to illustrate this. Imagine you're at work and a colleague suddenly becomes upset over a minor mistake you made in a report. Your first instinct might be to feel defensive, maybe even angry at their harsh words. But a Stoic approach would ask, what's driving their reaction? You might realize that this person is under a lot of stress from a tight deadline, or maybe they've been dealing with issues outside of work that are influencing their behavior. Instead of responding with frustration or defensiveness, you respond with understanding and empathy, acknowledging the mistake and offering a solution. By seeing the situation through a different lens, you've prevented a potential argument from escalating. You're no longer reacting to their anger with your own. Instead, you're responding with patience, calm, and a willingness to collaborate. This not only helps diffuse the situation, but also fosters a more peaceful and productive environment. In everyday life, our ability to shift our perception can make all the difference in how we handle conflicts. When we stop viewing others' actions as personal attacks and instead recognize them as expressions of their own struggles, we remove ourselves from the cycle of blame and defensiveness. This doesn't mean excusing bad behavior, but rather choosing not to let it trigger our own negative emotions. The Stoic principle of perception reminds us that we have the power to decide how we interpret the events around us. By changing the way we view challenges and disagreements, we can maintain our peace and prevent conflicts from escalating. Technique 3. Emotional detachment. Stoic techniques for staying neutral. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the concept of emotional detachment, learning not to take things personally. In moments of conflict, when emotions run high, it's easy to get swept up in the heat of the moment. But Stoicism teaches us that we don't have to react to every provocation. Instead, we can choose to remain calm, centered, and neutral, no matter how intense the situation becomes. At its essence, emotional detachment is not about suppressing emotions or becoming cold and indifferent. It's about understanding that we cannot control other people's actions, but we can control how we respond to them. This key insight helps us maintain our composure in the face of external chaos. By detaching emotionally, we create space between stimulus and response, allowing us to act with clarity rather than react impulsively. Consider the example of someone being yelled at in the middle of a heated conversation. In a typical scenario, our immediate response might be to defend ourselves, argue back, or become defensive. But the Stoic approach is different. Instead of becoming entangled in the other person's anger, we choose to step back mentally and emotionally, viewing the situation from a broader perspective. Imagine you're at work and your boss, frustrated by a missed deadline, starts raising their voice at you. The old reaction might be to feel hurt or angry and to shout back. But instead, a Stoic would focus on staying detached, recognizing that the boss's anger is coming from their own stress and not something about you personally. By breathing deeply and maintaining composure, you give yourself the time to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting emotionally. Instead of escalating the situation with defensiveness or anger, you remain calm and focused. You might acknowledge the issue with respect and offer a solution, keeping your emotional state in check. This calmness can have a calming effect on the other person as well, potentially diffusing their anger. This is the power of emotional detachment. It creates a space where reason and clarity can take over, rather than being driven by the heat of the moment. By not taking things personally, you allow yourself to keep control of your emotions, even when others are not. This helps to prevent unnecessary escalation and turns a potential conflict into an opportunity for calm resolution. The Stoic practice of emotional detachment is not about avoiding feelings or becoming disengaged from the world. It's about understanding the limits of our control, recognizing that we cannot control others' actions, but we can always control how we respond. This wisdom empowers us to remain neutral, even in the most intense situations. Technique 4. The pause technique, controlled response. In moments of conflict, it's all too easy to react impulsively, letting emotions take over and escalate a situation. However, the Stoic pause technique offers a powerful antidote to these knee-jerk reactions. The pause is simple yet profound. Before you respond to a provocation, take a moment to breathe and reflect. This small act of pausing gives you the space you need to control your emotions, assess the situation more clearly, and choose a thoughtful response instead of letting anger or frustration drive your actions. The idea behind the pause is rooted in the Stoic principle of controlling our reactions, not the world around us. It's a reminder that we don't have to be slaves to our immediate feelings. By taking a moment to pause, we can step out of the emotional whirlwind and regain our composure. This practice allows us to break the automatic cycle of defensiveness and escalation, providing an opportunity for a more rational and effective response. When we pause, we give ourselves the chance to consider the consequences of our words or actions. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about creating a space to choose a response that aligns with our values, rather than being driven by impulse. This technique enables us to keep calm, remain grounded, and focus on what we can control, our own behavior. Let's consider a real-life example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work and a colleague makes a critical remark about your recent project. The first instinct might be to defend yourself, but you can feel the heat rising in your chest. Instead of reacting immediately, you take a deep breath and pause. You focus on the situation, not the personal attack. After a few seconds, you realize that the remark, while not ideal, might be coming from the colleague's own stress or frustration. You choose to respond thoughtfully, acknowledging the feedback and offering a solution rather than getting defensive. The tension in the room dissipates, and the conversation shifts from confrontation to collaboration. This pause doesn't have to be long, just a few seconds can make all the difference. The key is to give yourself enough time to choose a response that is aligned with your Stoic principles, whether that's calm, patience, or empathy. By pausing, you prevent the escalation of conflict and pave the way for a more peaceful, productive outcome. The pause technique is a powerful tool because it gives us the ability to control our reactions instead of being controlled by them. It empowers us to respond with clarity, wisdom, and self-mastery, which not only helps us avoid unnecessary conflict, but also strengthens our emotional resilience over time. Technique 5. Responding with empathy, Stoic compassion. In the heat of an argument, it's easy to become so focused on defending ourselves or proving our point that we forget to consider the feelings of the other person. However, one of the most powerful tools Stoics have for diffusing conflict is empathy, taking a moment to understand the emotions and perspectives of others. By responding with empathy, we can transform a potentially hostile exchange into a more productive and peaceful conversation. Empathy, in Stoic terms, is the ability to step outside of our own feelings and attempt to see the situation through the eyes of another. Instead of reacting to someone's anger or frustration with defensiveness or judgment, we pause and try to understand the root cause of their emotions. By recognizing that the anger we face may not be about us personally, but rather about something the other person is struggling with, we can break the cycle of escalation. Seneca once said, "A person who is angry at you is not your enemy. The situation or misunderstanding that created their anger is your real challenge." This wisdom reminds us that the anger we face is often more about the emotional state of the person than about a direct attack on us. By focusing on the emotions behind the anger, we can respond with greater compassion and clarity, diffusing potential conflict. For example, imagine you're having a disagreement with a close friend. They start to raise their voice, accusing you of not listening to them. In the past, you might have gotten defensive or tried to argue back. But, remembering the Stoic principle of empathy, you take a moment to pause and listen more closely. You realize that your friend is not just upset with you, but is also struggling with a personal issue at work that has been weighing heavily on them. Instead of countering with your own frustration, you respond with understanding. "I can see you're upset, and I want to understand what's really going on for you. How can I support you?" This shift in perspective opens up a space for your friend to express their concerns, and instead of escalating into a full-blown argument, the conversation becomes a supportive exchange where both of you feel heard and valued. This is the power of empathy in action. When we take the time to understand the emotions and motivations of the other person, we create an atmosphere of understanding and connection, even in the most heated situations. We no longer feel the need to defend ourselves against their anger, because we recognize that it's not personal, it's simply a reflection of their own struggles. Empathy doesn't mean we agree with everything the other person says or does. It means that we choose to listen, understand, and approach the situation with a mindset of compassion and openness. By responding in this way, we not only diffuse conflict, but also foster stronger, more meaningful relationships. Technique 6. Recognizing what's outside your control. One of the core principles of Stoicism is understanding what is within our control and what is not. This distinction is crucial, especially when it comes to conflict resolution. The Stoics teach us that while we cannot control the actions, words, or emotions of others, we do have full control over how we respond to them. Recognizing this difference is not just a key to emotional resilience, it's the foundation for avoiding the escalation of arguments and conflicts. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This statement underscores the Stoic belief that our peace of mind and emotional well-being are governed by how we react, not by the events or people around us. In the context of an argument, this means that while we can't control how the other person behaves, we can choose to stay calm, thoughtful, and measured in our response. When we recognize that we can't control the actions or emotions of others, we release ourselves from the need to try to fix or change them. Instead, we focus on controlling our own responses, which is where true power lies. This mindset prevents us from getting caught up in an escalating cycle of blame or defensiveness. When we accept that some things are outside our control, We stop wasting energy on futile attempts to control them and instead conserve our energy for what truly matters, how we choose to act. A practical example of this can be seen in the workplace. Imagine a situation where a colleague is repeatedly late for a meeting and their tardiness is frustrating to everyone involved. In the past, you might have felt irritated or even angry, thinking that your colleague's behavior was disrespectful. However, by applying the Stoic principle of recognizing what's outside your control, you realize that while you can't control your colleague's actions, you do have control over your response. Instead of responding with frustration or resentment, you decide to remain calm and constructive. You may even consider approaching the situation with empathy, recognizing that there may be external factors affecting your colleague's punctuality. Rather than adding to the conflict with an emotional outburst, you calmly express your feelings and suggest ways to improve the meeting schedule. Your choice to stay calm, rather than letting the situation escalate, helps preserve your own peace of mind and allows for a more productive conversation. This approach does not mean that we condone poor behavior or let others walk all over us. It simply means that we choose not to be consumed by things we cannot control, especially when it comes to conflict. By focusing on what we can control, our reactions, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to manage the actions of others, which ultimately leads to more peaceful and productive outcomes. Recognizing what's in your control is not always easy, especially in moments of stress or frustration. But the more we practice this Stoic principle, the more we can navigate conflicts with clarity, calmness, and resilience. Technique 7. Staying true to your values, Stoic virtue. One of the key teachings of Stoicism is the importance of staying true to your core virtues, especially during times of conflict. The Stoics believed that virtues such as patience, wisdom, and self-control are not just ideals to aspire to, but essential tools for navigating life's challenges. When we adhere to these virtues, particularly during arguments or stressful situations, we can prevent conflicts from escalating and instead foster peaceful, productive resolutions. Patience, wisdom, and self-control are foundational to Stoic philosophy. Patience allows us to remain calm and composed when faced with provocation. Wisdom gives us the ability to understand the bigger picture, recognizing that many arguments are fueled by misunderstandings or emotions that are outside of our control. Self-control, perhaps the most important of the Stoic virtues, enables us to regulate our responses, ensuring that we don't react impulsively or rashly, but respond thoughtfully and measuredly. By staying true to these virtues during conflict, we don't just avoid unnecessary escalation. We create the conditions for a resolution that is grounded in reason and empathy. Instead of being swept up by the heat of the moment, we maintain our composure and act according to our values, not our impulses. This steady commitment to virtue not only helps us manage our own emotions, but also sets an example for others, encouraging a more respectful and calm exchange. A real-life example of this can be seen in a workplace disagreement. Imagine two colleagues, Sam and Alex, who have a heated disagreement about the direction of a project. Sam feels strongly that the team should follow a more traditional approach, while Alex believes in taking a riskier, innovative path. The disagreement begins to escalate, with both parties raising their voices and becoming defensive. At this point, Sam decides to stay true to the Stoic virtues. Rather than reacting emotionally, Sam takes a deep breath and reminds themselves of the importance of patience. Instead of jumping into the argument with a counterattack, Sam listens calmly to Alex's point of view, demonstrating wisdom by seeking to understand the other person's perspective. As the discussion continues, Sam maintains self-control, refusing to raise their voice or say anything impulsive. By sticking to these virtues, Sam helps diffuse the tension in the room. Alex, seeing Sam's calm and reasoned response, begins to soften and reflect on their own position. Eventually, the two are able to engage in a more productive conversation, finding common ground on the project's direction. What could have been a confrontation turns into a respectful dialogue, with both parties walking away with a solution they can agree on. This example shows how staying true to your Stoic virtues can lead to peaceful conflict resolution. By practicing patience, wisdom, and self-control, we prevent ourselves from being overwhelmed by emotions and instead focus on what truly matters, finding a solution that reflects our values and fosters mutual respect. Practical action plan, step-by-step guide for applying Stoic techniques. In moments of conflict, it can be easy to get swept up by emotions and react impulsively. However, the Stoic philosophy offers practical tools that can help us stay grounded, calm, and in control, even in the heat of an argument. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to apply Stoic techniques in real-life situations to prevent escalation and resolve conflicts peacefully. Step 1. Take a deep breath and assess the situation. The first step in managing conflict is to pause and assess the situation. When you feel an argument escalating, take a moment to breathe deeply. This simple action calms the body and mind, creating the space you need to think clearly. Real-life example. Sarah is in a meeting where her colleague starts raising their voice. Instead of reacting immediately, she takes a deep breath, closes her eyes for a second, and assesses the situation. She reminds herself that their anger is not a reflection of her, but rather an expression of their own frustration. This brief pause helps her gain clarity and composure. Step 2. Practice the pause before speaking. Once you've assessed the situation, the next step is to practice the pause. Instead of immediately responding in defense or anger, take a moment of silence. This pause is crucial in preventing an impulsive, emotionally driven reaction. Real-life example. John is in a heated conversation with a friend who is upset about a disagreement. Instead of reacting instantly, he holds back for a few seconds to consider his words carefully. This pause allows him to avoid saying something hurtful or inflammatory. When he does speak, he responds calmly and thoughtfully. Step 3. Respond with empathy, focusing on what you can control. Empathy is a core Stoic principle that helps transform a tense situation into a productive conversation. Instead of viewing the other person's anger as a personal attack, see it as a reflection of their own struggles or frustrations. You can't control their feelings, but you can control how you respond. Real-life example. Maria is arguing with her partner about household responsibilities. Rather than getting defensive, she chooses to empathize with her partner's frustration, recognizing that their anger comes from feeling overwhelmed. She responds, "I understand you're frustrated with everything piling up. Let's figure out a solution together." Step 4. Stay calm and detached from the other person's aggression. Staying calm and detached is one of the most powerful Stoic techniques in managing conflict. By not taking the other person's aggression personally, you prevent it from influencing your own emotional state. Recognize that their anger is a reflection of their internal struggles, not an attack on you. Real-life example. In a confrontation with his boss, Tom remains composed, despite being yelled at for a mistake. He doesn't react with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he stays calm, listens attentively, and responds with clarity, offering a solution rather than escalating the situation. Step 5. Reflect on what you learned or how you stayed true to your Stoic virtues after the situation is resolved. Take time to reflect on how you handled the conflict. Ask yourself if you stayed true to your Stoic virtues of patience, wisdom, and self-control. What did you learn from this experience? This reflection helps you continue to improve and strengthens your ability to apply Stoic techniques in future conflicts. Real-life example. After the disagreement with her friend, Sarah reflects on her response. She realizes she didn't take the anger personally and was able to communicate calmly. She feels proud of how she adhered to her Stoic virtues. and this reflection motivates her to stay even more composed in the future. Practical tips for conflict resolution. Focus on your breath. Deep breaths center your thoughts and calm your body. Whenever you feel the tension rising, take a slow, deep breath to regain control. Choose your response, not your reaction. A pause can be a powerful tool. It prevents hasty decisions and ensures your response aligns with your values. Keep the bigger picture in mind. Understand that most conflicts are temporary and can be resolved with patience and understanding. Learn from every situation. Every argument provides an opportunity to grow in patience, empathy, and self-control. Reflect after every conflict to improve your future responses. By following these Stoic techniques, you'll find yourself more equipped to handle conflict with composure and wisdom, creating peaceful outcomes rather than escalating situations. If you found this perspective on managing anger helpful, take a moment to pause, reflect, and practice these Stoic techniques in your daily life. Remember, it's not about what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond. If you're ready to dive deeper into Stoic wisdom and learn more about controlling your emotions, hit that subscribe button and keep growing with us. Stay calm, stay resilient, and stay true to your values.